y'all. Welcome to the Liberation is Lit podcast, where the power of storytelling meets the force of social change. I'm your host, Taylor Simon. And in this podcast, we believe in the profound impact of stories. And I'm so excited, y'all. I remember years ago before Liberation is Lit was even a bookstore, I worked with Kevin and got a copy of the book, The Worms That Saved the World. And it was just so amazing to me that I definitely had to share. So welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
No, I'm delighted to be here, and thanks so much for inviting me to chat about the book and just to maybe chat to your listeners about the various things in the book. I'm very honored to be asked. Thank you.
Yes, and tell the listeners where you are joining us from.
So I'm all the way over in Ireland, across the other side of the ocean, and down in Cork in the south coast. And I have to confess, at the moment we've had grey skies for I think nearly about it seems like for months and months and months. So we're not at our very best at the moment, and we're all extremely wet from the rain. But other than that, it's a great place to be in the summer.
Oh, yes. And we've had winter here. I'm in South Carolina and we never get snow. And we got like 6 inches of snow. So everybody's freaking out. Like, what do we do? I didn't leave the house. So,
Oh,
yes.
it's
So, can you kick us off by telling us a little bit about yourself as a writer and what inspired you to write a children's book about organizing and community and the environment?
all right. Well, I started off. I actually trained as an industrial chemist, and I worked for many years in a pharmaceutical plant and stuff here in Ireland and also in the States. And I did want to make a. I've always loved books, loved reading when I was growing up, and I kind of always thought I'd like to write. And I started off really on short stories and things. And I've written a lot of short stories, kind of, and also a number of fiction books. But I was really struck at one stage. We had my niece, who was only very young, and we were looking for some books for her. This was going well back, and there's loads of great children's books, but we're looking for something with a slight bit of a political angle on it. You know, at the time, I think it was. I'm from a left wing background, so I'm always been interested in socialist ideas and working class unionization. I was kind of looking for something like that, but there was very few books around. You know, you really had to search. So when I got more confidence as a writer, I really started thinking more about the idea of trying to write a book of my own that would maybe fill in some of those, boxes. And it's funny, I think that's been a thing I think is really important in a way. Sometimes with books, if they're not there, you have to write them yourself. And maybe that's another reason to be a writer. And this idea for the Worms That Saved the World came from something that happened very local to us here in Cork, which was just a very beautiful scenic area. It's about 20 miles away. And it was taken over by a group of developers. It had been farmland. The developers decided they were going to, they actually bought the headland outright and said we're going to put a luxury golf course on it. And they demanded as a result of this that they would extinguish all the rights of people to walk on the headland. And it had been, because of its beauty, a lot of people walked there, rambled on the hills and so on. And also there's a lot of bird migration paths cross over the headland. And a lot of different people were really upset about it. And a campaign got underway to try and stop the takeover of the section of land. And sadly, we didn't win that campaign. It was a really great campaign, very, very fun campaign. A lot of people involved in it, a lot of families, different groups, different communities. But in the end, we didn't win. It went to court, and the court sided with the landowners with the developers, and then the police got involved, and it became very difficult to keep it non-violent. But the upshot of it was that it was still very inspiring to be involved in it. And some of us thought, I at the time was thinking of a children's book, and I thought it would be lovely to kind of celebrate some of the positive things about it. And it was around that idea that I thought, well, could I write a children's book? And one of the key issues for me is I'm not an illustrator and I can't draw at all. So I knew I needed to try to hook up with a really, someone who was interested both in the story and in illustrating. And I searched around, and there was one other person who I often saw at the protest, and I knew she was a really great artist. And I asked her, Spark Dealey is her name, and she decided she'd be interested in it. And we worked together on the book, over quite a while. And Spark was brilliant. Her illustrations are really, I think, the key to the book's success because she has a beautiful, warm form of illustration that really makes even sometimes kind of difficult ideas sort of seem something that you can approach and look at and think about. And I think that's really good for children's books. And so it was really meeting Spark and working with her that made the plan to bring the book to life sort of possible. But that's the long way around telling you that, it was finding such a great illustrator that really made the big difference.
I love that. And I love how the story is based on a real life situation of community coming together to save the land and make it accessible for everyone, not just privately owned or for the elite. And I really like that the book was an opportunity to imagine a different scenario about what if we win? And that's a question that we often don't ask ourselves in community level work.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was a lovely thing to be able to, in a way, work on the story as fiction, even though based on a real event, because fiction is that classic things, yourself, it allows you to imagine so many different possibilities and actually imagining, because we knew with a children's book and with many books, you want to bring a good conclusion. In this case, we wanted it to be a happy conclusion. So we knew we were going to the earthworms who fight for their patch of land and try and win it for themselves, get back the rule. We knew in the end they had to win. So in some ways, it was a very joyful book to be involved in. And also, it did gather up a little bit of the spirit of the campaign. And many people who were involved in the campaign, even though they knew it hadn't been successful in real life, were really happy to see the book and to sort of say, brilliant, this is the outcome we wanted, but at least now we have a book that shows us what it was like. So it was really, there's a lot of, it's funny how with positive things, sometimes you get such extra affirmation. It's really lovely to be involved in it.
Right, because we definitely need some positivity to keep us going in this work.
Oh, yeah.
So I know you talked a little bit about Spark's illustrations really helping to drive home the point and make it accessible for children. But as far as the story itself, how did you approach simplifying complex topics like organizing, coming up with like ground rules and how everybody's going to work together and all of those topics? How did you approach simplifying those topics for a younger audience?
Um, I guess we at the background in the background, I think I'm quite influenced by anarchist ideas and stuff, and I was very familiar with the works of the thinker Kropotkin, and he had done a lot of work on mutual aid and on the idea of, instead of competition in the natural world, there's actually a lot of cooperation as well. And that was that was an idea that had always sat with me, and we kind of know it a bit in our lives. We see so much cooperation despite all the competition that's kind of put on us. And that seemed to be an idea to run with in terms of a children's book, because the children, I think, are very they're both honest, and also they can be very welcoming of other things happening and wanting to help out. We wanted to build on that in terms of the spirit of it. But we had a couple of different kind of just conversations about situations in the book where we thought, how will we deal with conflict? Because when you're talking with kids, and we were aware some of our audience might be readers might be quite young, how would that work? You know, what kind of conflict should we have there? So we have one illustration where there's an airplane's dropping, it's dropping weed killer on the course to sort of kill all the weeds. And it's a kind of a bit of a serious image for a children's book. And oddly enough, it's taken from a real life event, you know, of where napalm was dropped in Vietnam. And we had all these sort of different ideas. We're thinking, how can we make it work within the book? So we tried to be generally positive, and sometimes where we had even where we had things like all the earthworms needing to flee from the dangers they were in, we made that into a fun activity. They went down under the ground into very strange tunnels, and you know they had to hack away at a little bit of ground to get through. And then when they ended up where they were going to be safe, it was actually a place where pirates used to be long ago. So they had you know, we turned that into a kind of a positive. So we always try to keep a sort of a positive aspect to things, even when they weren't going so well. And that seems to be, I think that, and the other thing is, going back to it again, sparks really warm images, I think. And the worms themselves, that some people have said to us, why did you pick earthworms? And, you know, some people are quite, don't really like earthworms, in fairness, I'll admit it, but we like them because we just thought there are just so many of them. They do so much for the environment, and they're working away all the time underground, which we like that idea of the underground, the sort of working to undermine the system from underground. And also, there's such a lot of them. If you really want to get a big group of anything together, well, a lot of earthworms could pack a big punch, I think, in terms of being absolutely, you know, a great collective community. So
Oh, and I love that literally they're little people fighting the big forces that seem so insurmountable, and they show coming together, even though individually they're small, coming together, they made a large impact. And that's like one of my favorite messages from the book. So I love how they're just people we would think, or things that we would think are so tiny and insignificant, and how they were able to just defeat Goliath. So I love that as well.
yeah. And the funny thing, later on, we learned a bit more about their environmental role, and it's a big. It's really so significant, of course. If the earthworms suffer in terms of the land, and you know, so many other things start to are adversely affected in terms of our ability to grow crops and things. So they turned out to be sort of these amazing creatures that, you know, I'll even admit I like the idea of them as a huge community, but their work in this planet is like extraordinary, you know, and it was sort of it's a lovely aspect to the book as well, and has kind of spun off an interest in just earthworms and what to do and their role in compost making and stuff. So it was good.
Now I have to go down a rabbit hole with all the earthworm things because, like, there's a local author here, Cassie Primo Steele. She wrote a book called Beaver Girl, and it's environmental dystopian set in Columbia, South Carolina, but a beaver family is central to the book. And I had my eyes open about just how important beavers are to the waterways. So Columbia is a city where three rivers meet. So beavers are really important to that ecosystem, and how they really tried their best to slow down um climate crisis, but they could only do so much with humans just continuing to extract from the land. So similarly to earthworms, like I love this idea of bringing in the inherent dignity and worth and value that animals have, that it's not just humans who have value on this planet, they are doing so much of the unasked for and um, literally dirty work that we as
In
humans
truth.
benefit from.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and you know what? It's great. It's it's sort of great to be part of the thing with the story is just the story, but you can talk about all these aspects as well in the story. You know, if you're reading it to a kid or anything, and I mean, children love that idea of. I mean, one of the big things is all the questions you get when you read a story like that. There's like, why is this? Why are they doing that? And so on and so forth. And it's a great opportunity in an educational sense just to talk about the environment, its role, compost, and as you say, even with something like Beavers, how every sort of everything plays a part in this kind of beautiful planet, and where well, it's not us all, but there's a lot of corporate responsibility in really dumping on communities and on riverways, and we've had identical issues here with riverways being polluted and the beaver community in serious trouble there. So it's and the whole thing of pollution on the land as well, on farming lands with intensive farming. So you get a chance to talk about all those things, which are great, I think, for young kids, 'cause they'll take them with them through their life.
Right. And I love how you said, like, we want stories that prompts a lot more questions for kids than that they can then take that curiosity and start learning more about other things. So this book, I didn't realize how much nuance this book really tackles. I was just focused on the community organizing the environmental impacts, but it's literally so much to it. And I'm gonna keep recommending it to all my organizer friends who have any child in their life.
Thank you so much. No, it's great. I mean, it is a book that when we got it going, we couldn't get a publisher interested in it, which I think is another interest. Maybe I'm cutting into a new area, but it was one of those things where we in the end it didn't fit into any of the categories normal for publishing. Oh, it's not quite that age group, and it doesn't seem to. And then some of the topics there are they really suitable for children? But then in the end, we had to after numerous I would say we were almost a year and a half going through publishers who all said no. And then they, as Spark said, we publish it ourselves. And, it was the best thing we did because we didn't have any editorial issues and we were sure of the book. We were always a little bit worried if we do get a publisher, are they going to want some of this cut out or some of that cut out? So here in the end, we had our own sort of story. We were happy to go with it, and we got great support then from so many people, including yourself. That it's sort of word of mouth has gone out, and it ticks away nicely as a book now, with people seeming to get new things from it all the time, which is lovely.
Yes, and it can be a lot to self-publish, but there is so much power and empowerment that comes from self-publishing that you don't have to water down a message for, at the end of the day, a business that deems a story marketable or not.
So
So that's why I love self-publishing as well, and I'm so glad you didn't let lack of publisher interest stop you from getting this beautiful book into the world.
no, thank you. Oh, absolutely. It does it takes a bit of courage, I think, sometimes to step into the self-publishing world. But so many writers do it and have done it, and will do it in the future. I think with with the publishing industry going the way it is, it's in serious trouble now, I think, in many ways, in terms of how orthodox it's become and how mainstream. They don't want to, I think they don't want to chance on anything that's a bit different. Whereas we have these stories. I mean, these stories are there and they're waiting to be told. And there aren't the publishers there, I think, now sometimes to take them on. And that's why you have to, as you say, go take on the self-publishing route. And it is very rewarding in that sense.
So, speaking of the work, but also the rewarding from the work, what keeps you grounded in your work with community as a writer? in anything that you do? What really keeps you grounded and keeps you going, and how do you take care of yourself?
Well, I think it's, I definitely think the writing, publishing situation, has got more difficult, even say in my time in writing. But I, I, I definitely think a thing that keeps me going is the idea that the stories that I want to tell, anyways, just speaking personally about myself, stories I want to tell are not being told, are not out there. And for instance, one of my fiction books at the moment in the adult fiction is a book about a workplace accident in a pharmaceutical plant. Going back to my background there, and it's about a corporate cover up, not just one person's death, but it's those I just know myself. It's a lot of workplace safety is a big issue everywhere in the States, in Ireland, and those stories just so rarely get told. So for me, sometimes I go back to my own reserve and say, well, if I don't write this story, it won't be written. At least so far as I can see anyway. I wish someone else would write it, but I don't see sometimes anything else of a more left-wing nature. And I'm happy to kind of be in that area and say I can write things that I know will bring a new angle and bring a new perspective to a reader if they choose to read the book. So I think that's certainly something I kind of have fallen back on again and again. Like I'd say certainly at times I've thought to myself, oh, and I'm not so sure if I can keep going at this, but you do find, I think keeping a couple of projects going all the time is very important. And I feel almost now because, I'm sure we all feel the political climate has got very, very cold and has got very difficult. And I think it seems all the more reason now that we need to keep our stories out there. There's so many things that have to be spoken about and talked about. And writers are often the people who will do that. There's plenty of other people will do it as well, of course, and that's great. People from union organizers, community activists, but certainly writers can sometimes bring a new dimension to something. I recall many years ago the Glaswegian writer James Cameron saying that writing was one of the few things that are really free anymore. And he was making the point that, we still have a lot of freedom. No one can really take that from us. Now they might ignore us or not publish us, but we still have the ability to tell stories that are our own and that are important and that are true. So I kind of hold to that, that try and keep going on that level.
Yes, that's my inspiration too. And that's why I love promoting books like this, because these are important stories to get in the hands of people, to have them think differently, question what they've always believed to just be normal, or that they don't have power. And that's why I do what I do with Liberation is Lit. So thank you for putting the stories out in the world to challenge the status quo.
That's delighted. And as I say, getting it's sometimes when your book hits a chord somewhere else, far away as you are, it's great, and it's been lovely to hear back from people from all different places. You know yourself as a writer. You hear sometimes from people unexpectedly and they'll say, oh, you know, that was really great. And I think that makes it all worth it. It's so nice to hear that you've connected with someone.
Yes. And so, my last question for you is, what advice would you offer listeners who want to make a positive impact in their communities?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, that, I think I know at one level, the thing that really comes to my mind first off is I think it's so important now to show solidarity in a sort of broad sense, because we've had that issue here in Cork. We've had a lot of trouble. Actually, we had trouble with people targeting our libraries and trying to stop certain books being LGBT plus books being, and a lot of the library workers suffered a lot of harassment. And then gradually people came together and we had a very big march in solidarity with the library workers and with the libraries. And, I think it saw off these people, the far right and so on. And I think that was a great example. I think sometimes that there's nothing else for it but to stand up, show solidarity and be there for people. And that's on one level. But I suppose on a sort of smaller scale, everyday level, I think, it's just important to be good and be nice to people and to, do little things around, that sort of I think in a way a bit of kindness every day is something that helps such a lot in a sort of world that sometimes seems to have gone mad with social media and just busyness and time poverty. I don't know. It's sometimes it's just at the ordinary human connection is what can make the big difference. Can do a little bit, but yeah, I suppose as a political person, I always say at the end of the day, we've got to keep going and organize with people in our communities and we can make a difference. We can really do things, which is maybe one of the themes of our book, that we can really do things when we stand together. And I certainly think that's a message to keep putting out there to people, young and old.
Yes, a message, cross generational, cross continental. Everybody needs the message of solidarity, human connection, because they want us to be divided because we're less powerful when we're divided. So I love that so much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we can really, I know a little bit about the history of the states and the different things from union organizing to fighting racism. I mean, the story is inspirational, and sometimes we look over to the states and we see things that have been done there by community activists and by movements, and it's like it's great to see it. It's like so many fabulous examples of people, standing up for themselves and winning change.
Yes, and just seeing the work that's being done around the world and learning from other people and people learning from our struggles, it's all very connected and we're all connected. So we're all in this together once we realize that.
Absolutely. It's our planet. We're the ones that are going to have to save it, I think.
Yes, exactly. Nobody's coming to save us. No alien's gonna swoop down. Like we have to save us.
No, absolutely.
So thank you so much, Kevin, again for being on the podcast. Where can people keep up with your writing, The Worms That Saved the World? Where can people find all of that good stuff on the internet?
Well, I've got a web page which is my name, Kevin Doyle, and it's kevindoyle.ie. So the IE is an Irish domain name. So if you look for Kevin Doyle, writer or something, you should come across me, or kevindoyle.ie. And I'm here and there on Instagram and things, but I don't post too much on that. So the website's the best place to find any of the books and any information. And we're working on a new book myself and Spark now, a follow up to it, and nice little progress being made in it. So we maybe have a chance to chat about that at another time into the future.
Yes, definitely. And I'm definitely going to put the website on the show notes so people can keep up with the updates there. This was so great. I'm excited for the new book to come through. Like, y'all don't realize, like, we have to finagle postage to get these books here. So you can get them on Liberation is Lit. Can you get them on your website as well?
Can get them on our website as well. And also AK Press in California. I think they're out there. They also have stock of the book and have definitely, they'll also send them out probably at a more reasonable cost if you're stateside. So, but yeah, yourselves and AK Press, there are big supporters and we're really grateful for it.
Yes, love AK Press. I'm gonna put the link to just AK Press in general. They have ton of great resources and books. So I'm gonna put all of those in the show notes. So thank you again, Kevin, and thank you, listeners, for being a part of the Liberation is Lit podcast. If you have stories you want to share, want to suggest any topics, or just want to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Liberation is Lit. or visit our website, liberationislit.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review. And remember, your voice matters. And through the lens of stories, we're going to make a difference in the world. Until next time.
Thanks so much, Taylor. Really enjoyed it. Take care.